So here's a Bible trivia question. When and where is it recorded in Scripture that God says to someone praying to him, quit your groveling? Well, at least using the vernacular in Eugene Peterson's The Message. Any guesses? Well, today we answer that question and explain how this incident, this story, relates to our pastoral struggles with porn and the journey of recovery that we need to take. So welcome aboard. Well, before I answer that question, once again, let me say if you are in pastoral ministry and you are struggling with porn or other forms of unmanageable sexual behaviors, and you are looking for a safe place to turn, someone to talk to, a supportive group of people who get it, I want to encourage you to reach out to me. I've been a pastor for 30 years, and I still am involved in our local church as the founding pastor. I would love to hear from you. My email is bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. And even if you're not sure about a group, but you just want someone to maybe throw some ideas by or share a bit of your story or have me pick your brain about what next steps forward could be, we can set up a free Zoom call just where, again, confidential, where we can talk. And again, go ahead, reach out to me, email me, and we can set up a call like that, again, completely confidential. Well, let's go back to this Bible trivia question where God says, quit your groveling. Well, assuming you didn't cheat and do a Bible Gateway search, the answer is from the Old Testament, and it's God's message to Joshua. So let me lay out the context and then make some what I think are my own personal reflections and things that have to do with our recovery journey. So the story is about God's interactions with Joshua, and it's found in Joshua chapter 7. Now, coming through the Jordan River, and now there's been the miraculous destruction of the city of Jericho. The next city standing in line in the Israelites' way is the much smaller town of Ai. Now, since this looked like a much smaller, simpler challenge than the larger, more fortified city of Jericho, Joshua sends out a smaller contingent of soldiers, and they proceed to get their butts kicked. In fact, 36 of the soldiers are killed. But even of greater importance, something happens to the Israelites' confidence. All of the confidence that they had from the miraculous coming through the Jordan River and then seeing the walls fall down with the city of Jericho, all of that was now completely shattered. It says in verse 5, the heart of the people sank. All of the spirit was knocked out of them. As a result of that, you see Joshua's response starting in verse 6. It says, Joshua ripped his clothes and fell on his face to the ground before the chest of God. So that would be, I'm sure, the Ark of the Covenant. And he and the leaders, it says, threw dirt on their heads, prostrate until evening. Prostrate, not prostate, prostrate until evening. Now, this is the depth of Joshua's despair. He goes, oh, Master God, why did you insist on bringing this people across the Jordan? To make us victims of the Amorites? To wipe us out? Why didn't we just settle on the east side of the Jordan? Master, what can I say after this? Israel has been run off by its enemies. When the Canaanites and all the others living here get wind of this, they'll gang up on us and make short work of us. And then how will we keep up your reputation? That sounds like a pretty good prayer. It's obviously said with a lot of emotion, tears, crying, dirt, groveling, face floor in the dirt, right? Pretty impressive stuff, you have to admit. Apparently, God didn't agree, or certainly wasn't impressed with Joshua's great signs or prayer of sorrow. God says, this is in verse 10, God said to Joshua, "Get up. Why are you groveling? Israel has sinned. They've broken the covenant I commanded them. They've taken forbidden plunder, stolen, and then covered up the theft, hoarding it up with their own stuff. The people of Israel can no longer look their enemies in the eye. They themselves are plunder. I can't continue with you if you don't rid yourselves of the cursed things." So, what's going on here? Why does God not seem to be impressed with Joshua's great demonstrations of sorrow? Well, here's my take on it. First of all, God had already promised them that if through the whole book of Deuteronomy, you see God's continued promise through the last instructions of Moses, that God would fight for them and be with them each step of the journey if they only followed his instructions and his ways. So, the fact that this setback happened seemed to rock Joshua's confidence in God. And all of Joshua's great demonstrations of sorrow didn't fool God that Joshua, I believe, was actually questioning God's faithfulness. Remember, Joshua and the Canaanites and all the others living here get wind of this, they'll gang up on us and make short work of us. I think that's why God's response wasn't that charitable. Get up. Why are you groveling? It had already been clear what would be the result of the people obeying God, and what would be the result of the people disobeying God. So if God was not with them, obviously he wasn't with them in their battle against Ai. It wasn't a strategic blunder. It was an obedience problem, right? It's pretty straightforward. Moses had made it really clear in all of the previous book of Deuteronomy. So God basically goes back and explains to Joshua what is really going on. He says this: "They've broken the covenant I commanded them. They've taken forbidden plunder, stolen and then covered up the theft, hoarding it with their own stuff. The people of Israel can no longer look their enemies in the eye. They themselves are plunder. I can't continue with you if you don't get rid of the cursed things." It's pretty simple. The reason why this military setback happened was because of your disobedience. And then God tells Joshua clearly what to do. So get started. Purify the people. Tell them, get ready for tomorrow by purifying yourselves, for this is what God, the God of Israel, says. There are cursed things in the camp. You won't be able to face your enemies until you have gotten rid of these cursed things. And you know how the story goes on, how God identifies Achan, who had stolen the loot from the city of Jericho that was expressly meant to be dedicated to God. Okay, so that's the background story here. Let me give you 3 sort of recovery lessons that come to my mind from this Quit Your Groveling message. Well, here's the first one, and this is one that I've heard taught before. You might have heard it taught before based on this story. We know that Achan was one man who did something in secret. And you go, well, no harm, no foul, right? I mean, other than for Achan, of course. But we see very clearly how the implications of this went far beyond one man. It actually became a community sin. And whether we realize it or not, our private, secret sins do affect everyone around us, whether it is immediately apparent or known or not. Listen to these phrases. Israel has sinned, not just Achan. They have broken the covenant I commanded them. Not just Achan. They've taken the forbidden plunder. Again, private sins are corporate sins. Now, I know how hard that is for us to grasp in our uber individualistic society and the way we've all been raised. The point is this: my sin doesn't just affect me. It does affect me, but it also affects my family. It affects the people I lead. My secret hidden sin affects the church as a whole. Whether or not I've done a good job of deleting my history or using a VPN or using incognito mode or whatever it is, this is the clear implication. Our sins don't just affect ourselves. All right, so that's one that I've heard, and I think that's certainly valid. I think that's a really important thing to remember. Let me give you a couple other takeaways that I come up with from this story as well. Again, this historical event. Number 2, we can't defeat our enemies without confidence. God confidence. See, Joshua correctly understands that the confidence of the people has been shattered. Now you might say, well, where? Let's just get back to this confidence idea. This is how God says. The people of Israel can no longer look their enemies in the eye. They themselves are plunder. Well, we know that was because the presence of God wasn't evident or wasn't with them at this point. You see, you can't fight your enemies if you are afraid of them, if you can't look them in the eye. They will be too big and too strong for you. Again, where does that loss of confidence come from? Well, it comes from the fact that you can't be completely sure that God's blessing, God's presence is with you. See, that's why God says you won't be able to face your enemies until you have gotten rid of these cursed things. I don't know, where your theological bent is towards, but at a practical level, you can't fight your battles without an assured confidence that God is with you. And you won't be able to live in the assured confidence that God is with you while you continue to hold on to the things that invite a curse into your life. I've had lots of reasons, underlying motives as to why I wanted to move away from porn in my life towards a better life. A variety of reasons. But I think by far the biggest reason has been this idea of confidence. I want to live and walk in godly confidence. And I can't do that when I am caught up in the spin cycle, the rinse-repeat cycle of lather, rinse, repeat of guilt, remorse, and regret. I want to have a confidence when I parent my kids that I am modeling and living out what I want them to grow into. As a leader of my church, I want the confidence to know that God is with me, that He'll honor and answer my prayers and the prayers of our people towards His call for our church. You see, porn shatters that confidence. It leaves me guessing and hoping and posturing. It leaves me always with this doubt: will God really honor my prayers and the work of my hands? Now, if you're wondering, I am not a hardcore holiness preacher. It might sound like it a little bit, but I believe even in my sin that God still loves me. I mean, I've seen God use people, and you've probably known people where God continued to use people even when it was found out there was all sorts of secret sin in their lives. But I would hope that you would agree with me at an experiential level that we can't lead our people. We can't follow God if we can't look our kids in the eye, we can't look our wife in the eye, we can't look our people in the eye, and yes, we can't look even our enemy in the eye. So, what's my final takeaway from this groveling story? Well, I like what God's advice to Joshua was, starting in verse 13. He says this, so get started. The very first three words. So get started. And I would say, do something. Get started. I'm not asking for you to think something or to feel something bad or not bad. I know you already feel bad enough. I'm asking you, and I think God is asking you, to do something. Get started. So here's the question. What does getting started look like for you? Is it sending me an email? Is it coming out of your secret life, taking the first steps towards shining the light on those dark, moldy places? It is opening your lives up to another or a group of men. Is it maybe just practically removing those open sources of acting out that continue to trip you up? Perhaps it's coming clean with your wife. Get started. One of my favorite recovery, it's just a saying, but I use it in recovery, is this: if nothing changes, nothing changes. So I guess my final word is quit your groveling. Get started. We'll see you next time.